Arnold returns to his most iconic character 12 years after his masterpiece, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. But even though his body measurements are exactly the same, a lot of other things have changed, including the writer, the director, the composer, most of the actors, and Arnold's future in film. It's time to talk about Arnold's last major hit movie, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Hello friends, and welcome back to the Season 3 finale of every Arnold movie ever. This is episode 29, and we close out the season with what is easily Arnold's best movie of this era, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Is that saying much in comparison to the Triangle of Sadness that preceded it? Well, that's what I'm here to find out. In recent episodes, I've alluded to Arnold retreating to his most popular character after a string of box office defeats. But the truth is, Arnold had been pushing to make a Terminator sequel for years. Throughout the 90s, Arnold said it was the most asked question from fans. Everywhere I go, people say, when will there be another Terminator movie? So many people will this, it seemed inevitable. He and James Cameron would often ride motorcycles through Los Angeles. These guys were friends, and Arnold would often bring up the prospect of a sequel. Prior to Titanic, Cameron showed the faintest of interest in returning to that world, but only if he owned the rights. The rights. Yes, since this is a story about a Terminator movie, that means we have to deal with the dreaded. To paraphrase Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, the legal wrangling of Terminator 3 makes the legal wrangling of Terminator 2 look like the legal wrangling of the Terminator. It's complicated and incredibly boring, so I'll try to distill it down to its essence and somehow keep it interesting. If things get too boring, though, I will get interrupted by a notorious Terminator character, and I'm telling you, no one wants that. Trust me. Okay, here we go. Carolco, the production company that bought the Terminator rights so they could make T2, went out of business after a string of box office bombs capped by Cutthroat Island. They were forced to auction off the rights to the Terminator, which would then float between a bunch of different companies before coming up for sale again in the late 90s. James Cameron saw that as an opportunity to gain the rights to his own creation, which he notoriously sold for $1 to Gail Ann Hurd in 1983 in exchange for directing the first Terminator movie. If he could pull this off, Cameron would then write and produce a new Terminator with Arnold and Linda Hamilton returning. But while he was editing Titanic, he made a tactical error. He invited Mario Kassar and Andrew Vainia, who ran the now defunct Carolco, had them over for dinner and to view a cut of Titanic. He happened to mention during that dinner that the rights for Terminator were up for sale, and Kassar and Vainia left that friendly dinner with the intention of snatching back the rights they lost. Okay, oh God, I think I'm losing you. Oh, no.
Hi, I'm Chief Master Sergeant William Candy.
No, not Sergeant Candy. I'm sorry. I'm going as fast as I can. I'm almost done. Now, when Cameron found out, he was pissed that they went behind his back and very quickly lost interest in another Terminator movie, especially with Titanic about to be released. Isn't that just a messed up part of the business? You create something, whole cloth, from your own dome, this piece of art that wouldn't exist if it weren't for you. And then you don't even own it. Just somebody else is like, oh yeah, that's mine now. Fucking crazy. Now, the rights were back in Carolco's hands, rebranded as C2. But there was a problem. Arnold and James Cameron made that pact years ago that they would never make a Terminator movie without the other. And Arnold was still loyal to Jim. So, Kassar and Vainia, knowing how important that was, went back to Cameron to see if he wanted to direct. Cameron immediately shot them down after discovering they'd already hired another writer. Working from someone else's script in a universe that I fucking originated held no appeal for me whatsoever. Eventually, Cameron told Arnold, look, stop being so loyal, just go charge them a lot of money and go make the movie. But that wasn't the end of the story.
Ooh, it's me.
I know, but it's almost the end of the story. We're so close. Arnold had signed a deal years prior to star in a Terminator 3 movie, but the development took so long that by 2001, Arnold had set his sights on politics. He reached out to Kassar and Vainia to see if they'd donate to a potential campaign and was shocked to discover they wanted to talk about Terminator 3. Not only did they have the completed script, but they had already sold international and marketing rights, and since Arnold had signed that deal years prior, Kassar and Vanya threatened to sue him if he didn't star in it. So the politics would have to go on hold for a little while longer. This is like the least artistic way to make a movie, but hey, let's not forget, Cameron originally turned down T2 until Kassar offered him $6 million to write and direct. So maybe there's hope for T3 after all. When it came to breaking the story, the original script, written by Teddy Serafian, who wrote Tank Girl, reunited the T-800, Sarah Connor, and John Connor. John was working at a .com company and weirdly ended up being partially responsible for the rise of Skynet. The villain was a female Terminator, the T-1G, with the ability to make herself invisible. This version would have included Linda Hamilton and Eddie Furlong, but when Linda read the script, she was underwhelmed. I read it and I knew my character arc was so complete in the first two. And in the third one, it didn't take my character in any new direction. Without Jim breathing the breath of life into the film, no thank you. Now the search to replace Cameron began in earnest. Kassar and Vanya's first choice was Ang Lee, who turned it down to direct Hulk. The Terminator series has this glorious history. There was so much baggage for me. Their other top options seemed like they had the same thoughts. David Fincher, John McTiernan, and Roland Emmerich, they all declined too. No one wanted to follow in James Cameron's footsteps. No one except Jonathan Mostow, who at that time had made the Kurt Russell movie Breakdown and the Bon Jovi sub-movie U-571, which I confuse with K-19 The Widowmaker, and I'm sure everybody else in the world does too. Mostow was initially reluctant. I thought, why should anyone want to make this movie? T1 and T2 were so good. Why bother? But after reading the first draft, Mostow was intrigued and signed on to direct. His mission statement was, I wasn't trying to relaunch the series. I was simply trying to make a movie that would be the third in a trilogy and stand up with the other movies. Mostow brought in his own writers, college buds John Brancato and Michael Ferris, to rework the script into more of a road movie. He also swapped out Sarah Connor for John Connor's love interest, Kate Brewster. I mean, not like that. Like it's not like the original draft has Sarah Connor as John's love interest. They swapped out strong female character, new strong female character, and then they did away with the female Terminator turning invisible. They changed the model number also to TX. At the same time, Arnold listened to Cameron and negotiated the best deal of his career. And in fact, of anyone's career at that time. The largest upfront paycheck in movie history. $29.25 million pay or play, which meant he would get paid if the movie got made or not. Didn't matter. He also got a $1.5 million lump sum for private jets, a full gym, limos, bodyguards, you name it, he got it. And most importantly, an additional 20% of the profits for every aspect of the market. Theaters, DVDs, game licensing, toys, everything. Arnold was going to get a piece. For a movie franchise like The Terminator, Arnold's recent box office disappointments didn't come into play. The Terminator franchise was bigger than all of that. Eddie Furlong had signed on to the movie early in the process, in August of 2000. But as production inched closer, his substance abuse issues caused Warner Brothers to remove him from the film. Obviously, having Furlong in this movie would have given it more continuity and a lot more goodwill with the audience. But Mostow justified that by saying John Connor is psychologically a different person in this movie, so they would just go with the best actor rather than try to replicate the John Connor of T2. So he went with indie actor Nick Stahl, most famous at the time for the movie In the Bedroom. For John's love interest of Kate Brewster, Mostow originally wanted Claire Danes, but due to a scheduling conflict, he went with his second choice, Sophia Bush. For the female Terminator, Mostow had to find someone who could hold the screen opposite Arnold. James Cameron had found it in the sleek, cat-like Robert Patrick and showed that it wasn't really about the size of Arnold's foil, it was about screen presence. Supposedly, they auditioned 10,000 women for the role, and one of Arnold's top picks was China. They didn't go with that one, but they explored every other possible option, at one point even considering changing the role and giving it to Vin Diesel. But in the end, they found Kristanna Loken, whose biggest role up until that point was 22 episodes of the syndicated TV show Mortal Kombat Conquest, and a short-lived WB show starring Mark Paul Gosselaar. This was to be her film debut, and in his DVD commentary, Arnold had great insight into why she was chosen over 10,000 other women.
Let's have a sexy girl for a change, with a sexy body and just a knockout 10 figure and great physical appearance and beautiful face. And luckily we found such a woman, Kristanna Loken.
Okay. One other important piece of the Terminator puzzle was Stan Winston, who came back to retain the continuity of the practical effects. Winston and his company had stepped up their game in the years since T2, and they were now literally building functional robots like the T1 prototype. By the time the film went into production, it was the most expensive movie ever made at the time, $170 million. A lot of that's not on the screen. Most of it went into regaining the rights and paying Arnold's salary and his jet and gym and everything, which will explain probably why they run out of money at one point. But they tried to offset that with some very subtle product integrations you may have never even noticed. Filming started on April 15th, 2002, and Arnold knew there would be a nude scene where he arrives from the future, and anything less than perfection would be a distraction to the audience. So he worked to regain the exact same body dimensions he had on T2 12 years prior. I had to, you know. Otherwise people would say, he's lost it. He's all saggy and flabby. And that would be all anyone would talk about. I didn't want to be digitized because someone would blab and it would be in all the columns. So I just worked harder. But even though cameras were rolling, the cast was still in flux. A month into the shoot, Mostow felt that Sophia Bush's performance was too youthful for the role of Kate Brewster. So he fired her and went back to his first choice, Claire Danes, who accepted the role and got in front of the camera the very next day. In the commentary, they talk about how she literally made the character up on the fly. Like, they rolled the cameras and she was just like, okay, I guess this is what my character's gonna be. And one of the famous stories about this movie is that they wanted to perform this stunt involving the T-850 hanging off a crane and crashing through a building, but there wasn't enough money in the budget, so Arnold put up $1.4 million of his own dollars to get the stunt done. That's how much he believed in it. And it's that passion and dedication to what he was making that I think was missing from his more recent output. I bet you he didn't even shell out the money for his hat and collateral damage. But does that passion and dedication translate to a worthy successor to the greatest movie of all time? Let's find out. T3 opens with a nuclear blast and a voiceover by John Connor, who repeats the words of his father.
There is no fate but what we make for ourselves.
Then we find out that John lives off the grid.
No phone, no address, no one and nothing can find me. So I keep running as fast as I can, anywhere, nowhere.
For someone who is supposed to save all of humanity, when his fate is taken away from him, he doesn't channel that destiny into anything positive in this new non-nuclear world, like we saw in the T2 alternate ending.
Here, on the battlefield of the Senate, his weapons are common sense and hope.
He's just kind of a bum. Then we're launched into the future for some table setting. The future gets an upgraded look with that new 2000s sheen of CG layered over top Stan Winston's practical effects. Although, future John Connor's weird hairline gets me every time. This is not great makeup, I would say. And now, instead of just a couple Terminators in a shot, they can layer in dozens. But this time we don't really see any action, just a couple glimpses, because it turns out this is all just a dream sequence. The story actually kicks into gear when John crashes his motorcycle to avoid a deer. It's a random event, and it always rubbed me the wrong way that the inciting incident is literally an accident. Then we head to Los Angeles proper, where our first Terminator is arriving from the future. I hate the terrible CG on this melting mannequin. With $0 and about 40 minutes, I can do a comparably bad version in After Effects, and here it is. But I do like that the time travel bubble gets a little grid upgrade, and now comes with a cool sound effect. And here's the TX, the Terminatrix. She finds a woman, takes her car and her outfit.
I like this car.
And then connects to the internet to find a group of targets. She gets pulled over for speeding because she doesn't seem to care really about blending in, and in one of the more famous scenes of the movie, distracts the cop with a quick enhancement. It's a memorable gag, but it doesn't actually help the situation since it's implied she just kills him anyway.
I like your gun.
What?
Also, what does she need a gun for? Anyway, in the commentary, Arnold had some really deep insight into it.
But in the audience, there was this, you saw women sitting there telling each other, oh, that's a great idea. You have to check out where you get that done. Because there's some guys that like little breasts and there's some guys that like big breasts. So wouldn't it be nice if you can play both sides, sometimes even simultaneously.
Next, we meet Kate Brewster struggling to use technology as she fills out her registry with her fiancé, Scott. It's a fun, subtle way to tell us she hates machines without her just coming out and saying she hates machines.
I hate machines.
Luckily, they handle the introduction of her father with a little more subtlety.
Kate, it's your father.
We find out that Kate's father works in the government and is dealing with a computer virus.
This new computer virus is a tricky bastard.
The government is pushing to use an AI program to destroy the virus, but that's not a great idea because...
I'm not sure Skynet's ready.
Uh-oh. And now we save the best intro for last. Here comes the Terminator, and Arnold looks incredible. And in an echo of Terminator 2, it goes to a bar to find clothes, but the twist here is... it's ladies' night, and it can't find a match for an outfit until...
Take off your clothes.
Patience, honey.
Your clothes.
Talk to the hand.
Now.
Now look, I am all for humor in Arnold movies. The lack of humor is the reason Collateral Damage is such a slog. And when I saw this in theaters opening night, the audience ate this up. They loved it. I don't care what people say now. In that theater, people lost their shit. But it was a fleeting, empty laugh. It does not belong in a Terminator movie, especially with the bad, poorly aged stereotype.
Whoa, bitch! Wait your turn!
But also as the first thing the Terminator itself encounters. It announces that we're dealing with a gentler, sillier Terminator, and it's something I've talked about quite a bit in regards to Arnold's image. Ever since Last Action Hero, he'd been fighting against self-parody. And while this isn't playing directly with Arnold's image, it is playing with the Terminator's image, and it ultimately defangs it. Even in T2, that opening bar scene has shocks of brutality and maintains the Terminator's menace. Here, they not only give us talk to the hand, but they double down on the goofiness. Again, pushing Arnold back into self-parody. In a 2021 interview, Mostow explained his reasoning for the humor. I thought that if I could make them laugh, they would unfold their arms a little bit, which I think worked short term, but really had long-term effects that you don't feel until the movie's over. On the flip side, the TX goes to get a burger with a side of murder. Anyone else think it's weird that the drive-thru is backwards? She also goes to this house party with this weird robot dog, and to balance out all that goofy T-850 stuff, she's out here killing kids. Back to Mr. Off the Grid, whose construction job clearly doesn't provide benefits, so he breaks into a veterinary clinic and takes some animal pills and performs some self-surgery. Kate, coincidentally a veterinarian, is called in to work for a sick cat emergency and runs into John.
Please, don't do that.
He pulls a paintball gun on her, but she outsmarts him.
This is the stuff we use to chemically neuter dogs. Take a look.
And then locks him in a dog cage. Now we get what may or may not be a reference to Arnold's very first movie.
It's Hercules. I think he's got pneumonia.
Or maybe I've just been doing this series for way too long, seeing connections where they don't exist. I'm in too deep, folks. In another awful convenient bit of coincidence, Kate and John know each other.
My Kripke's basement.
What?
You're John Connor.
So much for running as fast as he can.
Anywhere, nowhere.
He's in the same place he grew up. Claire Danes has a wonderful bit of acting here where she's thinking John's going to recognize her when she says her name.
I'm Kate Brewster.
Something clearly happened between the two of them, but he can't remember. Their reunion is interrupted by another coincidence. the TX tracked Kate down to her job at 4 in the morning. A great touch here with the TX licking the victim's blood to check their DNA, see if it's Kate Brewster.
No.
Get a little more blood licking. Surprise! She accidentally found her primary target. Looks like Kate is dead meat. But here comes the T-850 to save the day.
Kate Brewster.
We get a callback to one of my absolute favorite Arnold catchphrases of all time.
Where's John Connor?
If I tell you, will you let me go?
Yes.
In a cage. You said that you'd let me go.
I lied. I lied.
And then we get our reunion between John and his surrogate father.
John Connor.
John's first thought is to ask the Terminator,
You here to kill me?
which is a weird thing to ask a Terminator, because like, if he was there to kill you, John, you'd be dead before you could even ask that question. The moment lacks tension anyway, because we know how this works by now. I love how the TX emerges from the rocks here and then blasts the T-850 with this plasma blast. It provides just enough of a distraction for John to run, and it shows off the TX's new abilities, of which it has quite a few, like the ability to take control of and talk to machines, which is a cool new wrinkle I totally forgot about. The TX commandeers a fleet of cars and hops in a massive crane truck. Then, in a twist of irony, the T-850 steals a cop's motorcycle with a variation on an Arnold classic.
Get off.
And the chase is on. The TX's remote fleet catches up with John, and the Terminator is on their trail. This scene has echoes of the chase from T2, minus the awesome shotgun reload, of course, but it does up the ante in a number of ways. More cars, bigger explosions. It's expertly crafted, gleeful mayhem, and a lot of it is practical. Here's the sequence Arnold paid for. It looks great. The TX eventually gets rid of Arnold. Then Arnold gives us a pure callback.
Get out. Get out.
Which, he just said get off a minute earlier, so like this loses a little bit of its impact. Not the last time that's gonna happen in this movie. And now we've got a fire truck chasing a crane truck, chasing a passenger truck. It's hard not to experience joy watching a fire truck explode. Or watching this insane stunt. That's CG, but it actually looks pretty damn good. Mostow adds a few small memorable touches as well, like this sound effect. And something that was clearly given priority this time around was adding physical weight to the Terminators and everything they do.
See if you can get him down. This guy weighs a ton.
After escaping the TX, John and the Terminator have a chance to catch up.
Do you even remember me? Sarah Connor? Blowing up Cyberdyne? Hasta la vista, baby?
If this were Eddie Furlong, this moment would hit differently.
That was a different T-101.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to teach you everything all over again.
But what about John and Sarah stopping Judgment Day?
You only postponed it.
Judgment Day, much like Thanos.
Judgment Day is inevitable.
This time we get the right amount of humor for a Terminator movie.
Drop dead, you asshole!
I'm unable to comply.
You've got to be shitting me.
No, I am not shitting you.
Hey, wait a second.
You're shitting me.
I'm not shitting on you.
We get a great practical gag here, while also learning the Terminator's model is obsolete. He tosses this destroyed fuel cell and it explodes in a wonky CG mini mushroom. And then we get a reminder that this Terminator is a big silly goof.
Are you gonna pay for that?
Talk to the hand.
Structurally, it's a good callback to a bad joke, but there's a really weird cherry on top with this absolutely insane music cue. That only lasts 2 seconds, but we need to talk more about it because there's a mystery to unravel here. According to the end credits, the song was produced by Peter Beckett, a composer who's also in the band Player. Baby, come back. And it's sung by William Randolph III, who founded Tuckahoe, Virginia in 1714? Yeah, no other credits come up for a singer named William Randolph III. No information on him at all, actually, which makes me think William Randolph III is actually Jonathan Mostow. Why do I think that? Because Mostow wrote the lyrics for this song. It was created just for Terminator 3. And he may have missed his calling as a songwriter, because this song has profound lyrics such as "Wabba, wabba, wabba, dat funky man." I mean, the music selections on T3 aren't exactly matching the heyday of T2 and Guns N' Roses. There is a song in here from a supergroup of Gavin Rossdale and the Blue Man Group. Now, I actually can't believe I did this, but I reached out to Mostow's production company for more information on Dat Funky Man, it's the name of the song, and only Dat Funky Man. But as of this taping, I have not received a response. Shocker. Did I waste an opportunity to try and get an interview with Mostow by only asking about Dat Funky Man? Yes, of course. Am I endlessly entertained by the idea that I emailed his reps just to ask about a song that's in the background of a movie for 2 seconds? Yeah, I am. All right, back to the movie, where it's John and Kate's turn to bond. We get a good encapsulation of John's life here.
Imagine if you knew you were gonna do something important. I mean, maybe the most important thing anyone has ever done. But there's a catch. Something terrible has to happen.
John finally remembers what happened in Mike Kripke's basement.
That's where the kids used to go make out, right? We made out in Kripke's basement. I cannot believe you remember that.
And it turns out that was the day before the events of Terminator 2, which will be important later. And we go back to Kate's wet blanket fiance, who literally wets the blanket thanks to the TX. Then we reach the most controversial scene of the movie. The Terminator takes John and Kate to a cemetery, which turns out to be...
Your mother?
Yep. They killed Sarah off screen. Everyone was so upset about this at the time. But let's not forget, this isn't the first time Sarah Connor's been killed off screen.
So if she's fighting the T-1000 and we don't see the outcome, and we go into the future, and the next thing we know, the T-1000 comes jumping into the future with us, Sarah's dead.
And that time, no one even seemed to notice. I remember being disappointed at the time. It always felt like you were watching the rewrite due to Linda backing out bleeding onto the screen.
What happened to her?
Leukemia.
But watching it now, I mean, I appreciate how the casket is full of weapons. That's very much in line with Sarah's character, and it's a clever plot device to both reveal her death and stock up on weaponry, and I do agree that she wouldn't have had much to do in this movie. It's a bit like in the original draft of Star Wars, where Obi-Wan wasn't killed by Darth Vader and just kind of putzed around for the second half of the movie with no real purpose. I'm still torn about this. Maybe Sarah could have been given an important death like Obi-Wan actually got, but that would have hung over the entire movie and possibly left an even worse taste in people's mouths, seeing a beloved character get killed a la Dark Fate. She was the heart of the first two movies, but like she said, her story was told completely.
The world didn't end. Every day after this one is a gift. She told me.
Every day from this day on is a gift.
Unfortunately, we don't have time to grieve because we have to get back to silly Terminator gags.
I'll shoot you!
Go ahead, see what happens.
Don't do that.
That goofy old Terminator. The clerk from the gas station earlier called the cops, and then we get another echo of a scene from T2. Kate is able to escape, but John, still refusing his call to action, doubts his abilities.
I'm not the one you want. You're wasting your time.
And the Terminator has to find a way to motivate him.
You're not the one I want. I'm wasting my time.
You fucking machine!
Better.
The TX is also on its way to the cemetery, and we get this legit great gag.
But they're gonna bring her back to this.
In what's easily the goriest moment in the movie. Most of the violence in T3 is off screen, and nothing reaches the eerie heights of the T-1000 giving the coffee cop an eye exam, or going to great lengths to minimize Todd's dairy intake. We get our big cameo in the movie.
I know what it's like to be in a hostage situation.
Dr. Silberman! And aside from Arnold, Earl Bowen is the only actor who made it through the first three movies. In the first one, he's a smug asshole who doesn't believe Kyle or Sarah. In the second one, he's still a smug asshole, but they added a more controlling, possibly sadistic side to him. And here, what else? Comic relief.
You find yourself imagining things, possible things, crazy things, insane things. Take years to get over it.
We get this nice effect where the T-850's carrying the coffin, which actually had to be held up by wires, and then more T2 echoes. Then this reveal.
Later, your children will become important.
Whoa, what?
She's your wife.
Kate then reunites with fake Scott, but for some reason the TX doesn't commit to the bit and reverts back to its original form before it can finish the job. I don't know why, I guess just to show the cool effect, but luckily, once again, T-850 is there to save the day. And we get another twist on an off-used Terminator line.
You want to live? Come on!
Come with me if you want to live.
Followed by yet another T2 echo.
Your fiancé is dead. Your foster parents are dead.
Now, after they escape the TX again, we reset with some exposition that'll carry us to the end of the movie. The Terminator reveals that the TX will target Kate's father because
Skynet is one of the digital defense systems developed under Brewster's supervision.
This is all about your father. He's the key. He always was.
I'm sorry. This guy is the key to the Terminator franchise? This guy? I don't even know his first name. Something Brewster? Bubby Brewster? And we get another fun callback and a reveal.
I'm giving you an order.
You have to do what I say, huh?
That's one of my mission parameters. I'm not programmed to follow your orders.
He follows Kate's. She's the one who reprogrammed the Terminator and sent it back through time. And we find out that Judgment Day, not only is it going to happen,
It's today, 3 hours from now.
and the Terminator provides another clue to the movie's ending.
You mean we go run and hide somewhere in a hole while the bombs fall?
It is your destiny.
Then another big reveal.
Why didn't he send you back?
He was dead.
Oh, well that sucks.
Followed by yet another reveal.
I was selected for the emotional attachment he felt towards my model number.
What? What are you saying?
I killed you.
And here's the thing. I like all of that. It even sets up what happens in Terminator Dark Fate, even though that movie ignores this one. Bubby Brewster finds out that the virus is spreading, and he's been pressured to turn on Skynet to kill it. He does it, everything goes well, and the movie ends on a happy note. At the same time, the TX infiltrates Cyberdyne, activates a T1, which is like the original model of the Terminator, then impersonates Kate.
Hey, what are you doing here?
But don't worry, the T-850 once again shows perfect timing, and that leads us to a variation on his most famous catchphrase.
She'll be back.
This variant, like in The Sixth Day, is meant to evoke "I'll be back" without actually saying it,
I might be back.
which would be fine if this were the only time they did it. Now, the T1s are now in play, and these are the actual working robots created by Stan Winston and ILM. Unfortunately, they get taken out pretty easily, and they're about as effective as the battle droids in Phantom Menace.
And they really are pretty useless.
Yeah, pretty useless with the old dangleweed here.
Before he dies, Daddy Brewster tells them to get to Crystal Peak, and John assumes he's telling them this so they can shut down the system core. Brewster's cagey about this,
It's your only chance.
but it's another breadcrumb to get us to the finale. We finally get the confrontation between the T-850 and the TX. Again, Mostow gives them a weight they never really had previously. In terms of bathroom fights, it's a pretty good one. I like anytime they can add inhumanity to their movements, like when the TX is on the bed, and then also right here. And just when it seems like we're getting a retread of the T-800 T-1000 battle from T2, the TX's ability to reprogram and control machines gets a really cool payoff. Now, a mini version of an HK confronts Kate and John, and this seems like it's John's moment to take action, finally embrace his destiny. But this is Kate's moment. And throughout the movie, John has been passive, rejecting that call to action. He voices that he wants to stop the apocalypse, but he's powerless to do so, and basically just runs the entire time. As they escape, the Terminator finds them but warns them to get away. It's been corrupted by the TX, and its mission parameter has been changed to kill John. John gets it to somehow fight its programming, which causes it to glitch and briefly end up in Street Fighter 2.
Perfect.
It shuts itself down long enough for Kate and John to escape to Crystal Peak, but before they can get in, the TX arrives. But don't you worry, because T-850 once again shows up at the right time, complete with a new twist on an old catchphrase.
I'm back.
And that would have been great if they didn't already bastardize I'll be back 8 minutes earlier.
She'll be back.
I think, actually, this is a much more clever, appropriate variation of I'll be back, and it feels like the bigger applause line. Unfortunately, that double dip really hurts the impact of this one. John and the Terminator give their kinda heartfelt goodbye.
Thank you.
We'll meet again. Go!
Then the T-850 goes out with another oft-repeated Terminator line.
You are terminated.
John and Kate make it to Skynet's core, take the elevator deep underground, and set the detonator to knock out the mainframe. But once they get there, they start to piece things together.
These computers are 30 years old. There's nothing here. God damn it. There's nothing here!
And then Terminator 3 reveals its gut punch ending.
Why did he lead us down here?
To live.
They aren't here to stop Skynet. They're here to survive. Well, they consider letting the bomb go off, but start to get calls on the radio.
Somebody please come in. Is there anybody there?
And after 2+ hours, John, in the very final minute of the movie, finally embraces his destiny.
Who's in charge there?
I am.
And Terminator 3 ends on a symphony of destruction. Before its release, there was a lot of trepidation regarding a Terminator movie without James Cameron. It was a feeling of like, okay, look, the best they can do is like not make it completely unwatchable. And the worst they can do is retroactively destroy the perfection of the previous two. And when it came out, the reviews mostly reflected that sentiment. Look, not as bad as it could have been, but not nearly as good as it should have been. The consensus on Rotten Tomatoes sits around a 69%. Ebert?
Terminator 3 is a well-made summer action picture and provides the kind of high-tech excitement that audiences are looking for, but the first two movies provided deeper feelings and more to think about, and so I'm right on the edge here, but my thumb is down.
Wow, that was a surprise, especially after Ebert went to bat for Collateral Damage and The Sixth Day. Now, Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines opened on July 2nd, 2003, 4th of July weekend, and blew away the competition with $72 million in its 5-day open. It also passed Batman and Robin to become Arnold's highest opening weekend ever. It ended up earning $150 million domestically and $283 million overseas for a total of $433 million. That makes it Arnold's second highest grossing movie of all time, and it became the last movie he would make before becoming governor of California. Now, Arnold went out on top of the box office, but did audiences show up simply due to nostalgia, or was the movie actually good? Much like the John Connor of this movie, Terminator 3 has been saddled with the weight of expectations. However, taken on its own, it is highly entertaining. It moves fast, it has some interesting surprises and tweaks to the Terminator formula. Some of the action is excellent, especially that crane chase sequence, which is genuinely exciting and holds up really well today. When I saw it opening night at the Burbank AMC, I stayed away from reviews, I went in fresh, and they were entertained. It played incredibly well in that moment, and I was relieved. When those credits rolled, I thought, it was good. It's really good. As a Terminator movie, though, it feels weightless. It doesn't have the careful attention to detail that James Cameron infused into the first two movies. His plotting is immaculate. When a character does something, it's for a good reason and it will lead to a consequence later. There's no wasted movement. Tidy. And not just when it comes to the big ideas. In T2, I talked quite a bit about the small moments that gave each scene a lived-in quality. The feeling that even the smallest characters had lives outside of this one moment. All those touches, big and small, turned T2 into an iconic piece of pop culture. Terminator 3 has a smidgen of that, but not enough to make it truly iconic. And there are no Arnold catchphrases that don't just crib something from earlier, and nothing that reaches the heights of Hasta La Vista Baby. It also doesn't help that the character of John Connor is passive for most of the movie. Remember, his story is kicked off when he falls off his motorcycle. He gets trapped in a cage, then saved by the T-850 multiple times, taken to his mother's fake grave, dragged to save Kate's father. Remember, he didn't even give that order, couldn't even give that order, and then he's directed to the bunker that keeps him alive. He never even fires a gun, and it's Kate who takes out a hunter-killer. It's an interesting role reversal. He's the damsel in distress, but it hurts the movie because this is specifically supposed to be his story. However, he's mostly just along for the ride and shows no agency until literally the last minute. Add to that the amazing number of coincidences it takes to bring everyone together, and it becomes harder to get invested. And some may say, well, isn't the point of the movie that you can't escape fate and destiny will find a way to bring all these people together? And I say, yeah, kind of, but it comes across more like a cop-out than a well-designed script. The other issue is the Terminator itself. In T2, Arnold had major concerns about the Terminator losing its edge because it wasn't the villain and was going to be paired with a kid for most of the runtime. James Cameron went through painstaking lengths to remind the audience that this was still a deadly killing machine, such as in the Terminator's opening scene in the bar, or the violent way it incapacitated people after promising not to kill. The T-850 in Terminator 3 is toothless. Even when we're nearing the climax and its programming has been altered, it still mostly retains its affectionate qualities by fighting its programming. If they wanted to go all the way with it, they could have had the TX switch its programming and make it more like the cold-blooded Terminator of the original movie, a silent, unstoppable killer. But at this point, Arnold had his eye on politics and approached the character from a different perspective. The other thing Cameron did was balance the amount of humor made at the expense of the Terminator. Remember, back in Terminator 1, he rejected Arnold's pitch for the Terminator to drink a beer and get drunk. T3 has more jokes than the first two movies combined, and while individually those moments can be entertaining, it carries with it the unfortunate side effect of watering down Arnold's Terminator character. But I will admit, things could have been worse. Much worse, because there's a deleted scene that would have completely broken the movie in half, and it was meant to explain who the Model 101's human exterior was modeled after. It involves a man named Master Sergeant Candy, and it is insane.
It is now within our power to make war safe.
Can't believe they even shot this thing and committed it to film. Oh my god.
I don't know about that accent.
We can fix it.
I will say though, all that humor does succeed at throwing you off the scent of the shocking ending. It elevates everything that came before it and, dare I say, gives the movie its entire purpose for existing. It's the film's thesis statement. The future is inevitable. That's a drastic change from the message of the first two movies, that the future is not set, we have the power to change the future, and hope will always drive change. This is more cynical, fatalistic. But it's not a shock ending added in a last-second reshoot. It's a carefully planned and foreshadowed twist, hidden in plain sight if you pay attention to what the Terminator tells Kate and John. And you may disagree with the message. You may feel like it negates what was done in the first two movies, but at least it's a unique point of view. Mostow has something new to say within the context of the Terminator. And if you're going to have a new filmmaker take over, that's what you want. You don't just want someone out there simply mimicking what James Cameron has done before. You want a fresh perspective. I love the message of the first two movies. There's no fate but what we make for ourselves. But there are days when I'm more at a Terminator 3 mindset. No matter what we do, things won't change. There's room for both perspectives, and I think it's up to you to sort out which one you believe. Terminator 3 is a well-crafted action movie with some interesting ideas and a strong ending, not just to the movie, but to Arnold's film career before he goes on to become the governor of California. All right, let's get to the stats. Acting chops, 8. The fact is, when he's playing the Terminator, he's at his best. Kill count, 0 for a stagnant total of 601. Catchphrase, because it's the one that everyone references and it'll probably make a few people angry, talk to the hand. And here are the every Arnold movie ever rankings. This one's interesting. Struggled with the placement. Might be controversial, but let's find out. Got your cameos, T2 3D. 18 and below, no change. 17 to 15, no change. 14 to 12, no change. 11, The Running Man. 10, Pumping Iron. And breaking through the top 10 at number 9, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. I know. Everything else remains unchanged. Next up, I'll cover Arnold's time as governor, every policy he enacted, including his car tax refund and what I spent it on. And I'm just kidding, I'm going to take a look at all the cameos he did during his time as governor. I'm going to cover the Expendables trilogy. I'll jump ahead to cover his new Netflix show, Fubar, and then we're going to return to his post-governor film career. And on a non-Arnold related note, I'm also finally going to do a video on sudden death. But before all that happens, drop a comment. Let me know what you thought of Terminator 3. I'm actually very interested to hear everybody's thoughts because I know this movie was controversial at the time. A lot of time has passed. A lot of Terminator movies have passed. How do you feel about it today? Let's talk about it, and I'll see you guys next time.